Africa under discussion. The Foreign Secretary wanted to bring fellow UK parliamentarians up to speed, especially with the G20 Economic Summit only 2 days away. Africa, he said, was suffering like much of the rest of the world.
Of course, Africa faces a new set of pressures in addition to the historic burdens that it brings forward. Less investment, lower commodity prices, lower demand for African exports, and importantly, reduced remittances from Africans living abroad all mean that Africa and its people face a new set of pressures. The impact will vary, but honourable and right honourable members will have seen some of the estimates. Cuts in growth rates will be widespread, but some of the individual numbers are very stark indeed. GDP growth in Angola has already fallen from 15% to -7%. Botswana is feeling the effects of a 90% cut in demand for exports, as they account for 50% of government revenue, and Zambia is suffering from copper prices falling by a third. Meanwhile, in the DRC, export earnings are projected to be 27% lower this year than last, and there's a cash flow crisis projected for the DRC government.
Hence the importance of the coming G20 summit.
That is why the London summit is dedicated to take concrete actions to protect the poor and vulnerable, to support free trade, promote investment, and reform the international financial institutions. The United Kingdom will be supporting the creation of a vulnerable financing facility managed by the World Bank and a global vulnerability monitor led by the UN to manage the impact of the crisis and increase international accountability to the poorest people in the poorest countries. I think it's important in this respect to recognise that in addition to the economic and environmental imbalances that lie at the heart of this crisis, there is also a political imbalance represented in all of the major international institutions whose representation is skewed towards the old powers. That is why I hope there is support right across the House for the Prime Minister's drive to include the whole world in the debate in London this week.
He then turned to the specific situation in Zimbabwe.
Nowhere is the challenge of promoting democracy more evident than in Zimbabwe. The whole House is desperate to see an end to the suffering of Zimbabweans achieved through governance that restores economic and civil rights to its people. More important, so are the people of Zimbabwe. For years, it has been led on a path of economic ruin and human suffering. Turning that around is a formidable challenge. It needs the MDC, the Movement for Democratic Control, to be allowed genuine power within the new government. We all hope that Morgan Tsvangirai's appointment as Prime Minister offers the change that Zimbabwe needs. We commit to working with him to support stabilisation and recovery. That is why, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have increased our humanitarian assistance and will spend some £50 million this year to help feed Zimbabwe's people, combat cholera and improve access to clean water and sanitation.
And this is what he said about Kenya and Sudan.
We remain very concerned for the country's future. There are signs that the reform process begun 15 months ago might be losing momentum. Insufficient efforts have been made to end the climate of impunity. The failure of the Kenyan Parliament to agree the formation of a special tribunal was a setback for efforts to secure justice for victims of the post-election violence, and corruption and mismanagement are still significant problems. Recent allegations underline why Kenyans are calling for their government to show that it is accountable and transparent and to uphold the rule of law. Unless the pace of political reform picks up, the outlook is bleak. We want to see progress on the national accord in order to prevent a repeat of last year's violence. Elsewhere, it is clear that a strong international role is needed. In Sudan, the UK is a strong supporter of the Darfur political process and the AU-UN chief mediator, Jibril Baseleh. We will continue to support efforts to reach a lasting political settlement, with security established and civil society engaged.
Much to debate. The discussions now transfer to the G20 summit later this week.